Hey, welcome back to the show. And joining us today is returning guest Bob Moriarty of 321gold.com. Bob, how you been?
I'm doing good so far.
Yeah? How's the weather over there in southern France?
It sucks. Okay. I wish you hadn't asked that question. Wintertime, you get a lot of rain here. And my yard is filled with mud, and I have chickens, and I have to get dirty feeding the chickens. And I hate wintertime, not because the temperature's not bad, but the constant rain.
Yeah, I've been getting quite a bit of rain here as well in Central California. It's been pouring quite a bit. But on the plus side, my house is on the base of the Sierra Nevadas, the mountain range, and right now it's just covered in snow. So it's actually really pretty to go outside and all that. But yeah, it's actually raining right now. But well, obviously there are a number of different topics that we can dive down today. You mentioned obviously the arrest of Andrew. There's obviously Epstein files. People are talking quite a bit about that. We spoke off camera about the greater polarization amongst commentators. I mentioned to you, I had somebody on. I hadn't had him on in some time, and it was interesting to hear his thoughts. And moreover, the lamentation of others directed at those points of view. And it's interesting to see just further siloing, if you will, out there.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things I believe, and I don't have hard evidence, but I do believe it, someone, some group, some entity is trying to stir up shit. Now, you can go on YouTube, and there are hundreds or thousands of fake AI videos saying just about everything. Somebody is deliberately trying to confuse people, and they're doing a very effective job of it. And it scares me because I'm convinced somebody is trying to set up a civil war, and they're probably succeeding.
Yeah. I presume you're alluding to kind of like an intelligence / click that much of us talk about, kind of being behind this, trying to foment something. Is that? Can you just kind of unpack that?
That's part of it, certainly. But I do believe there's a group. I believe it's planned. They want total chaos, and they're getting it. And frankly, it's very difficult for ordinary people to figure out what the truth is anymore. We used to know that the mainstream media was lying to us 100% of the time. And that has not changed. Whatever the government tells you, whatever the mainstream media tells you, they are lying to you. They lied about COVID. They lied about 9/11. They lied about the GFC. They lie about everything. And people say, well, people lie on the internet, okay, the non-mainstream media. And I totally agree with that. Of course they do. But the mainstream media lies 100% of the time, and the alternative media only lies 50% of the time. So 50% of the truth is a lot better than zero.
Yeah, as I have been on this journey, and I always joke and say I've been doing this since breakfast, but I'll just mention in that not only has my mental model of things changed profoundly, but also I've begun to realize that there's a reason why, whether people like him or they don't, perhaps Tucker, Sean Ryan, a number of these other people that people have gone to in lieu of mainstream media, and why these people have massive followings and they have a massive reach. I've had guests on say, "Hey, these guys are controlled," and I don't really watch them. I don't watch those guys anymore. But some of the guests, maybe here and there I'll tune into hearing what they're saying. But what I'm getting at is, Bob, is more and more it seems that a lot of people in the alternative media space, I mean, certain big names, I mean, they've got millions and millions of subscribers. they're controlled, or they conveniently omit and do not cover certain topics. And I'm finding in my own personal experience that because I've covered sensitive topics for sure, and I feel like I've covered topics I've never heard some of these bigger names even reference. I feel like they get so caught up in this left right paradigm, and maybe they'll touch on like deep politics like a little bit, but that's it. There's no other mental model.
That's it. That's it exactly. Okay, they're trying to create this divide between left and right, and frankly, uh, I can find fault in every possible opinion. Okay, no two people are identical. I'm conservative in some things and liberal in other things, and everybody I know is the same. But someone is deliberately trying to create a divide. And I'll give you a good example. Do you follow Seymour Hersh?
I know that name. No.
Okay, Seymour Hersh was the reporter during the Vietnam War who covered the My Lai massacre. He uncovered the government cover up. And he's truly one of the best reporters in the United States today, which unfortunately is commentary on all the rest of them because they're terrible. But Seymour Hersh has definitely been compromised, and some of the things that he said are just so wrong. When the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, he actually contacted me because I had written a piece. Now, I was in the military, I was in combat, I know how the military works, and he came up with his version of what happened blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, and it was total fiction. And it was so much fiction that anyone who was a real reporter, this guy listened to the 5 o'clock volleys in Saigon every day. He knows the government lies, but when they feed him a story, he's biting on the whole thing. And he wrote something today, and he was talking about Iran and the United States. And it was just utter fiction. And I'm shocked because I had a lot of admiration for him. But I think there's a lot of people who are controlled.
Yeah, I know we mentioned some names, and I'll omit those those names, but people that I think have sound or interesting points of view on things, and to hear certain positions that they have on whether it's Trump or whether it's Israel is very interesting. Considering what I mean, what I have come to learn, and what I feel like many others have as well. And so I think I think it's worth entertaining and hearing their thoughts and ideas, even if we don't completely agree. But yeah, it's I just noticed that because I had him on the other day, and it was just interesting to just observe the feedback.
Uh, because this divide exists, and because someone is definitely trying to put a wedge in it, uh, it's scary. Some of the things about ICE and the actions of ICE and Trump was elected on the proviso that he was going to close the borders and he was going to get rid of the illegal immigrants. And frankly, I think they went after the wrong illegal immigrants. They knew who Biden brought in, and Biden brought in some real criminals, and those people absolutely deserve to be booted out of the United States. But frankly, the United States economy is dependent on wetbacks. Okay, if you buy a Christmas tree in the United States, a wetback from Mexico was the guy who raised that tree. And my Rio, the guy in the back seat of an F4 from Vietnam, raised Christmas trees in North Carolina. And they cut the trees in November and shipped them. And the illegal labor all goes back to Mexico. And the illegal labor comes back when winter is over in March or April and they start taking care of the trees again. You can't buy a Christmas tree in the United States that wasn't trimmed by illegal immigrants. Americans don't want those jobs. They don't pay well enough. So you got a sub-economy in the United States in agriculture that is dependent on illegal labor. And frankly, we need that. And with the Trump crackdown in California, there were a lot of crops that rotted in the field because there was nobody to pick them. So there's I think the real fault is in Congress, and I think immigration is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a good thing, but it needs to be under control and it needs to be legal. And I fault Congress for not passing laws to make a path forward to residency or citizenship. And Trump's using it like a beach ball just to kick around. Some of the stuff, ICE was utterly out of control. They were the closest thing to Nazi thugs that we have ever had in the United States. And I was very pleased to see Holman put a lasso around them and pull them back. They were out of control. People were right there. They were literally murdering people. The guy that carried the gun to a protest, and I highly suggest not doing that, but the guy that took a gun to a protest and tried to protect a woman, they took him down, took the gun away from him, and then two guys shot him in the back 10 times. Now, that's overkill.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate what transpired there with him and the gal, regardless of kind of the context of it. I'll also add uh, a frequent guest that I have on, and I'm sure he's watching this, Zach Hubbard. He's introduced some interesting thoughts as it relates to theatrics, the theatrical component to some of this, and I suggest kind of checking out his take on this, because it's a totally different mental model regarding these events and the timing of it and numbers and all that. Some might think it's kind of out there, but it's kind of interesting. But I know that anyhow that's tangential. But you're talking about ICE. You're talking about the polarization. Tell me what else you are observing out there. I mean, obviously we've got the Epstein files is on everyone's top of mind.
Okay, clearly, anyone with an IQ of over 67, and to have an IQ of 67, you have to be a Somali in Minnesota. There is a cover up, the most massive cover up in American history, and Donald Trump is terrified of that information coming out. And there's some really interesting aspects about the Epstein issue. The guy was a Mossad agent. He was handing the information to the CIA. He was the most valuable agent in Mossad history. So you have to ask yourself, would Israel let him rot in a New York cell? And the obvious answer is hell no. Okay, he was a very valuable agent of theirs. And there's been all kinds of evidence come out. Epstein's still alive. Okay, they're photographing him in Israel. There's some stuff that's so obvious. They did haul a body out of that prison cell, but the nose of the person they hauled the body out was not Epstein's nose, okay? And there was so much goofy stuff about the guards and the cameras that didn't work, and the guard that reported, no, they really took him out. So Epstein's still alive. He's still functioning. I have seen a video, and it absolutely could be AI, where he said if Donald Trump doesn't do what we tell him to do, we'll kill him. And I believe that. And I believe that Israel controls the House, they control the Senate, they control 98% of our government, and they tell Trump what to do. Trump's not making the decisions about attacking Iran. Anyone who ever spent anything past boot camp in the military would look at a country of 92 million people and say, wait a minute, we're not going to defeat those. I was in Vietnam for 20 months. We had 550,000 troops. We had the 1st Marine Division. We had the 3rd Marine Division. We probably had 15 Army divisions. We had B 52 strikes where they had 27 B 52s coming in together, okay, dropping bombs that would cover 5 miles long and 500 meters wide, and everything in that was killed underneath. And we were fighting a country that was primitive, that only had 40 million people. Iran is an exceptionally sophisticated country. They're intelligent people. They're nice people. They are not Arabs, and they're not the enemy of the United States. And why the United States is fixing to get into a war that we can only lose is insane to me. Now, were you aware that World War One ended 3 empires?
Yeah, more or less. You're alluding to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, I think the Ottoman Empire, and then the Russian Empire, basically, right, with the overthrow of the Tsar.
Bingo.
Okay, is that it?
Okay.
All right.
The war against Iran is going to eliminate 2 empires. It's going to destroy one physically, and it's going to destroy the other economically and politically. There is no question anyone in Iran understands who the enemy is, and the enemy is Israel. Israel has attacked 7 countries in the last year. This bullshit about Israel being the victim. They are never the victim. They are always the perpetrator. And Israel doesn't like the idea of anyone in the neighborhood having power. So they were put on a list going back to 2001. This was the 7 countries in 5 years that was going to be destroyed. And the last country, of course, was Iran. This is deliberate, has nothing to do with the nuclear weapons program. There is no nuclear weapons program in Iran. It has nothing to do with the ballistic missiles. Yeah, of course, Israel doesn't want them to have ballistic missiles. Israel wants to have the right to attack Iran anytime they want. They just don't want Iran to have the ability to attack back. And then we don't want you supporting the Houthis or Hezbollah or Hamas. And the fact is, I don't think that's significant anyway. Now, one of the things that I'm going to point out, and I have said this in my books, and I've said it in many, many, many interviews, ordinary people learning to ask the right question. They don't need to listen to experts, and there's no such thing as a guru. What is the most effective military force in that area in the last year?
You're obviously referencing the Middle East, the most effective military forces that you're getting at. Okay, I mean, I would assume the U.S. being used
Nope.
by Israel, or
Nope.
what?
Nope. There is one agency group that really
Mossad?
hasn't been defeated or either stopped. Hezbollah, I'm sorry, not Hezbollah, the Houthis, okay? Yemen is the poorest country in the world. I'm surprised they've got any weapons bigger than BB guns or bows and arrows. These guys literally are wearing sandals and they've got towels on their head, and they defeated Israel. Now, that is absolutely amazing. And you would think Israel and the United States would have learned the lesson. Now, one of the lessons I learned in Vietnam is killing people has nothing to do with winning wars. if you want to win a war, you want to change the mind of your enemy. The mere fact that you kill a bunch of people doesn't accomplish anything. Uh, the British medical agency called Lancet estimates somewhere between 160,000 and 250,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been murdered since October 7th. Israel lost that war. Okay. Now, they don't understand they lost the war because they've got this chosen people bullshit. But the chosen people bullshit is about to destroy Israel. Did we talk about who the chosen people were? Have we talked about that before?
Yes, we did. Yeah, and you mentioned how that was gradually weaved into the. I'm blanking out on the the Bible that was introduced in the 1830s and things of that
Well,
nature.
actually, no,
The
that's not part of it. The concept of the chosen people comes from Genesis, okay? And God came down, talked to Abraham, says, okay, you and your family, okay, you're the chosen people. But what Israel doesn't want to admit, and nobody thinks about, is Abraham was the patriarch of three different religions. He was a patriarch of the Jewish religion, clearly. He was also a patriarch of the Christian religion and a patriarch of the Muslim religion. So if you want to believe in chosen people, the Jews are the chosen people, and the Christians are, and the Muslims are. So we've got this interesting situation where these lunatics, and I call them lunatics because they are lunatics, they are pathological liars and they're sociopaths in Israel are about to destroy the Middle East in the belief that God loves them and hates everybody else. And we're going to see in the next week or so.
Well, I think you have the crypto, you know what, as part of that, and I think they're controlled by another group that no one talks
Of
about. But
course. Well,
yeah,
and we know who those are. Okay, if you want to know who controls the financial world, who all you got to do is ask the question, "What's the richest family in history?" And that's who it is.
that, and I suspect some of these old bloodline families. So I hear
Really?
back in.
No shit.
I I just had to mention it because no one talks about it. no one.
Well, funny thing you say that because everybody's terrified of saying it. We've got all these lies that we absolutely accept, and nobody wants to sit and say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's bullshit." Okay, we're fed so much bullshit. We have bullshit for breakfast, we have bullshit for lunch, we have bullshit for dinner. Nobody ever says anything. Okay, we know who's running the world or who wants to run the world.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, Albert Pike is coming to mind. I mean,
And he absolutely called it correctly.
you look at all the handshakes and I mean, I'm still learning this stuff, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm some expert on it, but all the handshakes and the esoteric, just activities. And it's pretty interesting. I picked up, actually, Zach Hubbard suggested that I get the Secret Teachings of All Ages. So I've been kind of looking at it. That's an interesting foray, I feel like, into this, the way some of these people think and operate. And
Here's what's scary to me, and I'm going to tell you something that I think you'll understand. There is a very simple reason that people who are actually in combat do not talk about what they did. Have you ever thought about that? Do you know why that's true?
not to invite, post traumatic stress into your life again.
Nah. We love talking about it. You know, if you ever have a reunion, everybody goes in, gets drunk, and starts telling lies about how brave they were. They're willing to talk about it, but the issue is the frame of reference. Now, to understand that, I want you to explain to me and to your listeners, how do you convince a blind person what the color purple is?
I don't know how you do it. You you could use Braille or something. You can't. Yeah.
Okay, if it's not in their frame of reference, okay, if a person can see, you can say, well, it's kind of a cross between black and green with a little yellow in there. But it's, you know, it's this goofy color. You get flowers that are purple sometimes. Oh, okay, I get it. But if you're talking to a blind person, they're going, what? I don't know what black is. I don't know what yellow is. If I don't know what black and yellow is, how do I know what purple is? And the answer is you can't. So I could talk to you about combat, and you would come to one of two conclusions. Either Moriarty is the biggest hero in world history, going back to Superman, or he's a monster who is running around murdering people. There's a little bit of truth in both of those, okay? But you can't talk about things that you have no frame of reference. Now, one of the things that I'm going to absolutely admit ignorance of, the Epstein files that have come out, I had no idea that there was so much sick, perverted cannibalism, murdering babies. What? Because it's not in my frame of reference. There's no book I've ever read. There's nobody I've ever talked to who understood it. I've never participated. I've never known anybody who participated. So when they came out a couple of years ago and started talking about Pizzagate, okay, you would call this number and you would order pizza, and that's a little girl, or you order a hot dog, and that's a little boy. That's bullshit. I mean, you just couldn't believe that crap. And then the Epstein files come out, and there are hundreds of references, including to jerky. Epstein ordered, I think, 5 or 6 barrels of sulfuric acid the day he found out that he was being investigated on Little James Island. I think, what could you possibly use sulfuric acid for? There is a ranch, I think in Arizona, or New Mexico, that Epstein owned. And supposedly there's bodies buried there. That's really spooky. That's really scary to me. And it suggests that the oligarchs, the people who really control us, are so much more evil than we ever even imagined. If the Epstein files are opened up for real, I think there would be a revolution. Now, did I point out to you before how easy it would be to figure out who the criminals were? We know
Mm-mm.
who was raping the little girls. We know. We've got the videos. You want to find out who is banging Virginia Guthrie? We got the videos. Okay. So does the DOJ actually want to identify the criminals? No, they want to cover up the criminals because the DOJ is part of it. Now, that scares me. That truly scares me. When I was a kid, and this is literally going into the Marine Corps at 18, I believed everything the government said. Nobody came up and said, no, they're lying. It took years of Vietnam before a lot of people started waking up saying, wait a minute, we're fighting a war that we don't have to fight. That's a stupid war, and the Vietnamese are not our enemies. And now all of this stuff is coming out. It's all being exposed, and it's far more evil than I ever even dreamed. Some of it, like Hillary Clinton, we know Hillary Clinton's. You know how to tell Hillary Clinton's evil? Look at her.
Well, for me, what was really telling was listening to the excommunicated Archbishop Vagano, to have somebody, all the way over in Italy who is fairly high up in the Catholic Church, call out names: John Podesta, the Clintons, all these other people, Agenda 2030, and Anthony Fauci. I want to see my Italian Anthony Fauci, and that, and then you look at the Maria Abramoviches of the world, and you start to, I wish there was like one source you can go to. I mean, there are in some respects, but it's like, it's all these disparate parts. And then when you start to tally it all up, okay, you're like, wow, like I'm hearing it from this person, there's literature on this. Okay. It goes back centuries. Okay. Obviously it quacks like a duck, like it's a duck. And there's this cognitive dissonance where people don't want to come to terms with it. They think it's out there. And, yeah, it is very dark, but you'll never hear these topics covered by certain people on YouTube or on other shows where they have 2-3 million subscribers. They will never, they'll talk about other topics, but they'll never, I've noticed that there's certain topics that are never covered. Only the small channels.
I know someone who's one of the most brilliant speakers around, and I don't want to talk too much because I don't want people to figure out who it is. And there's one topic he just will not touch, period. And he will talk about anything, criticize anyone, exceptionally sharp people. And there's a third rail, and you don't touch the third rail.
That's what I'm finding. And sometimes I kind of regret talking about certain things on the channel because I'm clear, like I don't get the views I used to get. That's why I actually started a new channel where I'm just going to focus on like safe topics. Like it's like, well, what's at the end of the day, even if you have someone just break down the whole, like this is exactly what's going on in the world. Like, what are you going to do unless everybody en masse does something? All you can do is just make money. So you have freedom. You don't have to work a 9 to 5, and you have something put aside, and you can buy property. And like to me, that is the avenue. So I mean, at some point, it's kind of futile to go down it. But yeah, I have observed that.
There's a flaw to that logic. Okay, self-censorship is just as much censorship as any government censorship. And the fact is, there's a lot of things that we should be talking about, because if you actually examine them, you would realize how easy it is to figure out you're being lied to. And we need to do that. The information is available there. The oligarchs are exceptionally powerful people. They shadow ban everybody who disagrees with the mainstream media. So you have to fight. If you want to be independent, you're going to have to fight for your independence. So I would encourage you to do the things, go up to the edge. Okay, that's an important thing to do. We've got an obligation to do that. Otherwise, the evil forces, and I'm not a firm believer in a God, but I am absolutely a firm believer in a Satan. And you can look around in the Middle East and see exactly who Satan is. There is a group of people who are utterly controlled by Satan and doing evil. And all you have to do is open your eyes.
Well, I have become more religious personally as I have become more aware of this stuff. You can't help but, I mean, obviously you mentioned that you're secular, but I definitely hold the opinion that there is something that is influencing these people, this clique, that is beyond human life, right? Because this agenda, like this Fabian, very surreptitious, very gradual rollout of things. Most people like Klaus Schwab, he's not going to be able to really see all this coming to fruition. And so that leads me to believe there's something. What that is, I don't know. Everyone, so some group says it's this, it's that, etc. But there's something that is influencing. There's some, not to sound all woohoo cheesy, some dark energy that is influencing these people, and it is, it's directing them. Now, these other things going on, I think of all the distractions going on just tangentially over here in the States. All you hear is about the Savannah Guthrie case going on. I was talking with that about Doomberg the other day. Now, obviously, no one wants to have a loved one disappear. I'm not dismissing that, but it is interesting what is picked by the media to receive coverage and what isn't and what doesn't.
What happened to her probably happens 20 or 30 times a day, and it's just as terrible in every case. But you're absolutely correct. I think it's horrible what the family is going through, but the idea that it leads on the 6 o'clock news is patently absurd.
Absolutely, absolutely. In other news, obviously, I think we touched on it definitely off camera. Andrew was arrested, which I'm actually kind of surprised, and a lot of these people are facing flack who've been involved in this kind of Epstein saga, and it'll be interesting.
I'm pleased to see that because a lot of the people who have been identified, some of whom are only tangential to Epstein, have recognized, say, wait a minute, we were dealing with a really evil person. And when you deal with an evil person, you become an evil person. And there are a lot of people who are being hung out to dry, and I approve. And the interesting thing about the release, the Epstein files, is Andrew was literally doing stuff. He was a traitor to the UK. Now, I didn't know that before. I thought he was banging 15-year-olds, and I was pretty disgusted by that. But he not only was doing that, and some of these people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and who's the lawyer in Boston?
Lawyer in Boston.
Yeah, I'll think of it. These guys clearly were doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing with the guy who was clearly a criminal. Uh, Letwick, okay, it's a perfect example. No, I never had anything to do with him, except for this time I took the whole family and my 2 young daughters have lunch with him on Pedo Island. God, are these people stupid? Didn't they realize that they were going to be blackmailed? He made it so obvious. It was crazy. Somebody comes up to you and starts offering you stuff like that. You need to think about it and say, what exactly does this guy expect to get out of it? What he expected was control, and he did. And I believe some of this stuff, like saying they would kill Trump. If Donald Trump doesn't obey Bibi Netanyahu, they will kill him.
Yeah, I just don't subscribe to the notion that Trump is playing 5D chess and doing that. I have a very hard time buying into that. I think all of yeah, I think literally all these people. Yeah, go ahead.
Trump is just as stupid as he acts. I mean, he's the most amazing people. He's totally wrapped up in this me nonsense. He thinks he's a brain surgeon. He thinks he's the greatest leader in history. He's a friggin' idiot. He doesn't understand economics. He was a draft dodger in Vietnam. He's a serial bankrupt. He cheated on every white that he was married to. And he's had half a dozen examples of where he was taken into court doing things sexually that he shouldn't be doing. He said, oh, well, Epstein like playing with little girls, but I don't go for that. Really? Well, he's the same guy who said, 12 is too young, but 13, 13 is okay. What? How do you know? How did that get into your frame of reference? If you ask me for an intelligent discussion of what is acceptable, God, I'd think 18.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of reference to him. There was an incident where someone reported a girl being raped and then her taking a shotgun to herself. Someone reported that. And then, yeah, a lot of other incidences.
There is a reason. Well, let me give you an example. Okay, we go back to Vietnam. I was flying a spotter airplane, single engine Cessna, high wing Cessna, a guy in the back seat who was an artillery officer or grunt who communicated with the ground, the pilot up in the front seat. I controlled airstrikes and artillery strikes. We were going to go into the Ashaw Valley. The Ashaw Valley is the end of the Ho Chi Minh Trail where you come into Da Nang Da Nang and Phu Bai. And when we discovered that when you fly over certain areas, they shoot at you. Now, we couldn't see anything. It was triple canopy jungle. We could not see what they were doing underneath us. But there were areas that we knew if we flew over that area, they would shoot at us. And then we thought about it and thought, if they're shooting at you, it means you're over the target. People defend the most important targets. So the reason the DOJ has only released a couple of percent of the Epstein files was it is so important and so explosive, they have to cover it up. And of course, the boss is Donald Trump. And to hear Blondie being interviewed in front of the Senate the other day was the biggest joke. She gave easily the worst testimony I have ever heard of any witness. And if she was any sort of honorable person, she would resign immediately. She came across as a shrew and a witch.
Yeah, I mean that and Cash Patel and Dan Bongino. I don't know how some of these people. I know like Dan, for example. I never really watched his show. I mean, I'd see clips of it here and there, but to go from the debacle that occurred with his time at the FBI to then wanting to come back to doing a show, and you look at the comments. I mean, it is filled with people livid and just completely chastising him for his lack thereof. And
Well, it's totally two-faced. Okay, we're going to take a position, okay, until we get hired by the government, and then we're going to totally reverse our position. Really? Don't you have any ethics? I'm shocked at the level of government today. I haven't heard of a single military leader say the war against Iran is so wrong, I'm going to resign. I mean, even during the Gulf War, you had a few lieutenants and captains who said, this is wrong. I'm not going to do this. The head of the Department of Defense / War was going to bring charges against a former Navy captain who happened to be a senator who came out and said, if you're in the military, do not obey illegal orders. And they were going to demote him and take his rank away from him for saying something that every enlisted man and officer in the service has been taught. You have an absolute obligation under the Geneva Convention to not obey illegal orders. What Trump's doing, bombing all those so called drug boats, that's illegal. Okay, it's not only illegal, it's morally wrong and it's foolish.
Well, I suspect, yeah, we'll see a lot more of situations like that here to come. So it looks like the regime change on Iran is a foregone conclusion. Is that your opinion?
I think the chances are substantially above 98%. It would take an asteroid hitting New York City or California uh, falling into the ocean to stop the war. Now, unfortunately, and you just talked about the rain in California, it looks like there's a good chance California will fall into the Pacific.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised.
Well,
I
Route
mean that, and you have the
1
political divide.
has, yeah, Route 1 has already fallen into the ocean. You're acting like you don't know that.
Did you say Group One?
No, no, Route 1.
Oh, Route One. Got it. Got it. Yeah, you're talking about Highway One. Highway One. Yes, I'm very familiar with Highway One. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you
Hmm.
got to go to Hawaii to be on it now.
I haven't been there in some time. That'd actually be a good visit. So okay, so you mentioned Iran, regime change in Iran, pretty much like a 90%. Okay, what are some other things you're tracking, you're following? How about over in Europe? How about Ukraine or Russia? That stuff.
I'm glad you said that. Okay. How familiar are you with Ray Dalio?
Pretty familiar. Bridgewater, is it Bridgewater Capital? He's a founder,
Yep. The guy is
billionaire hedge fund
absolutely,
investor.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. And he's written several bestsellers. And this gets really interesting and really scary at the same time. I printed this out. I'm glad you brought that up. He wrote a book last year called How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. And he breaks it down into 6 segments. A country does segment 1, and then segment 2, and then segment 3, and then segment 4, and then segment 5, and then segment 6, and it goes broke. At the Munich Security Council, Rubio got up and said, okay, might makes right, and we do whatever the fuck we want because we're so powerful. And everybody in Europe said, "Oh, that's horrible." Okay, it's not like we would do that. Well, guys, you're nothing but colonies for the United States. You don't have any say in that. Rubio came out, or not Rubio, Dalio came out with a article that I posted on the site saying we just hit stage 6. And where it gets really interesting is that once you hit stage 6, and the international world order falls apart, the collapse can be suddenly and be catastrophic. And I will predict if that idiot in the White House attacks Iran, and I think there's a 98% plus chance of that happening, it could easily destroy the world's economy. Not only has the ability of fomenting World War III, China and Russia have said, okay, we're not going to allow Iran to be destroyed. They have ships there, they have aircraft there, they're monitoring what's going on. We've got between 2 and 4 aircraft carriers on the way there. I've seen several reports of up to 4 carriers. But in Vietnam, we had thousands of airplanes. We had 550,000 troops. We had troops in Thailand. We had troops in Guam. And we still lost the war. We were fighting an unsophisticated enemy. Iran is not that. Iran has the ability to shut down the world economy in one day. Were you aware of that?
You're You are referring to the Strait of Hormuz, correct?
Exactly. They
Well,
can and will shut it down.
I have also heard that the U.S., just to give a counterpoint, that the U.S. doesn't get as much oil from there as, or the West as that. I guess it would actually hurt China more because I guess China gets quite a bit of its oil from that strait.
It would stop the world's. It would stop the world's economy literally overnight. You would see oil at $200 or $300 a barrel overnight. They have that ability regardless of how much force is brought against that. You cannot defend the Strait of Hormuz because it's too easy to attack. So they have the ability. I'll go back to what we used to talk about when I was in high school. A irresistible force and an immovable object. And when an irresistible force hits an immovable object, you have unmeasurable energy. Iran has the end of the war in their hands to use, should they want. But unfortunately, Israel has exactly the same thing. Okay, Israel has somewhere between 200 or 300 nuclear weapons, and Israel is just dying to use them. And I'll tell you what the scenario is. The United States attacks Iran, China, and Russia attack the carriers. They attack all these dozens of American air bases. They lob hundreds of missiles into Israel. And Israel gets up and says, wait a minute, we're the victim here. We're going to use atomic weapons. We're going to totally take out Iran. Wow, that's scary. I believe the biggest change in the last 500 years, perhaps the last 1,000 years, is going to happen in the next week or two. And I don't know how bad it's going to be, but it could be really ugly.
Well, I am thinking about some of the other guests that I've had on and the viewpoints that I've heard in terms of again, you might think I'm crazy, or some people listening. I'm going to touch back on the kayfabe component to the world stage. I've heard people say that that there's a Chabad Lubavitch connection there between Putin, obviously Netanyahu, Trump, okay, and then Putin was part of the, I think, I don't know if it's called the Young Leaders or Early Leaders. That was an organization that Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, the
I'm totally
World
blanking on his name.
Economic Forum.
Yeah, but there was some like early leaders thing that he had put together like years and years ago that Putin had
No,
been
they
a part
still
of.
do it.
Okay.
They
And
still do it. They do
yeah,
it every year. Young global
yeah,
leaders.
and then I guess the Rockefellers. Go ahead.
And well, here's what's interesting, and you and I were talking about this earlier. I follow even the people I disagree with because I want to re examine my belief system. And I don't see Putin being part of the young global leaders as being a problem. I think that Putin understands exactly how evil the World Economic Forum is. No question. The World Economic Forum and the Club of Rome is under the control of a specific group. And, they want to turn the rest of us into slaves. And Putin is aware of it. I don't think he's part of it. I think his participation in the World Economic Forum actually educated him into how dangerous these people are.
Well,
So I'm going
I
to agree
think you have a
with you
point.
and disagree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a good point, and I'm reminded that, and it's good that I hear this because, go with people's actions, and I guess on paper, so to speak, or I guess on actions in general, Putin has been, if I'm not mistaken, a staunch supporter of traditional values in Russia, as well as the family formation, Christianity, etc. So that does serve as a counterweight to those who postulate that he is part of this kayfabe, this WWE illusion that these leaders are fighting with each other, but they're really working together, like a 1984 thing, and that they need to just wipe out. I don't know if you know Mas Paulsvik, but he holds the opinion that a lot of these wars have served as a means to just wipe out the cream of the crop men in society, right? World War One, two, Vietnam was never intended to win. Iraq, Afghanistan, it's just resource extraction, and then let's just reduce these numbers. Let's just get them down, get them down. So, yeah, I mean, it's important to hear different points of view for sure.
Well, the person you were just talking about, I disagree with a lot of people because they want to believe in intelligent conspiracies. And they want to believe there's all these people controlling what's going on in the world. There are groups who have similar interests, but frankly, I think they're stupid. I think it's exactly the opposite of an intelligent uh, force. I think it's a stupid force. I was in Vietnam. I've watched the United States fight all these 251 wars, and the only people that benefited were the military industrial complex. And interestingly enough, two of the greatest military leaders in U.S. history, uh, Dwight Eisenhower and MacArthur, warned against the power of the military industrial complex. And they're not intelligent people. They're like ants. Okay. There's so many of them trying to do the same thing. They appear intelligent, but they're not intelligent. They're stupid. We fought all these wars and we had absolutely no reason to fight. Watch the Europeans now. Do not try to convince me European leaders are smart, with the exception of two leaders, okay, Oban being one. They're a bunch of blithering idiots. They're a bunch of barking chihuahuas. The amazing thing is, you got this continent that used to lead the world, and they're a bunch of chihuahuas now. Oh, we need to go war against Russia. For what? What did Russia do to Europe? And these guys are saying by 2030, we need to build up our military so we can go to war against Russia. Oh, you want to get your ass kicked again? Okay. Napoleon tried it. What happened to him? He got his ass kicked. Hitler tried it. What happened to him? He got his ass kicked. You're going to tell me that Macron or Mertz or Starmer, those people are idiots. I wouldn't hire those people as a corporal in the Marine Corps.
Well, it's like him and Zelensky. I mean, it is the more I learn about Zelensky's pick as a person, the more I realize, wow, this is just totally just a joke. All this stuff, and as a site,
Can I prove your point?
please.
Okay. Every leader has a bag man. Okay. He's the guy that collects the cash. Zelensky had a bag man, and the bag man got caught, and they went in and they raided his office, and they found him with like $25 million in cash. That was $2.6 billion in wire transfer receipts. They know exactly how much money he stole, and they know exactly where it went. Hang on a second. I'm going to go kill my
Sure.
dog.
Yeah.
I'm not going to kill him. I'm just going to take him out for a beating when we get through.
You were saying?
Okay. Where were we? Let me talk about Putin and Lavrov. We're talking about Zelensky. Zelensky stole $2.6 billion. They had the wire transfer uh, receipts, okay, in the guy's office. What did you hear in the mainstream media about it?
I didn't hear about it at all. Yeah.
Crickets. Okay. Now, the really funny thing about Zelensky is that if you're over the age of 15 and you got an IQ that goes into three numbers, the guy's a crackhead. Okay. He's snorting coke all the time. He is totally, absolutely a druggie. And everything that he says is stupid. there's stuff that we know if we actually would look into it and think about it and ask questions. Do you remember the Minsk and the Minsk II agreements?
Yes.
Okay. Part of the provisions of the Minsk and the Minsk II agreements was that the breakaway republics who did not want to be part of the illegal government in Kiev could vote for self-determination. They did that twice. Okay. Now nobody talks about it. They're saying that Putin is saying, okay, uh, Kiev has to give Donbass to Russia because they want to be Russians. Wait a minute. They agreed on that years ago. Okay. Zelensky knows that breakaway republics had the legal right to vote not to be part of the corruption in Ukraine. And they did vote. And everybody's pretending that the Minsk II agreement doesn't apply. The Minsk II agreement, the Russians won the war a month after it started in February 4 years ago because the Ukrainians came to the table in Turkey and said, okay, we'll go back to the Minsk II agreement. And then Boris Yeltsin, uh, who am I talking
Johnson.
about? The British.
Johnson. Boris
No,
Johnson.
no, the British Prime Boris Johnson goes to Zelensky and says, no, if you'll keep fighting, you can keep stealing. So the war went on and on and on. Ukraine came to the table 4 years ago. Okay, I regret the fact that 1.7 million Ukrainian young men have been killed because they didn't have to die. Would you like to know how I can teach you everything you need to about war in 2 hours? I can just tell you what to do, and if you will spend 2 hours doing it, you will know everything you need to know about war. Would you like to know?
Let's do it.
Go to a military cemetery and walk around for 2 hours. And you are going to come to the same conclusion that everybody else does at the end of the 2 hours. You got any idea what that's going to be?
Hmm.
Why the fuck did these guys die? What was the purpose? Who was better off? Why did we do that? If you go into a military cemetery, I don't care what country it is, you're going to think, wait a minute, that was really, really stupid. And it is stupid. And I was in a war.
Well, I have not been to war, but I'll add that.
You don't have to be. Spend 2 hours,
Well,
go through a cemetery. You know everything that I know.
Yeah, I've been to. I mean, Arlington Cemetery, and I've been to a number of other ones as well for service members. So, I was going to comment on that.
Hang on. You can't visit. You have to spend 2 hours by yourself, going from grave to grave. And if you do that, the only rational conclusion you can come to is, God, that was really stupid. You know, Joe Blow, 17 years old, Bill Smith, 28 years old, so and so, 42. What? Why did these people die? How was anybody any better off? I mean, the crazy thing about Iran, and all these Americans are trying to justify war against Iran. For what? What did Iran do to the United States? The answer is nothing. Iran is no threat to the United States. They've never threatened the United States. They've never harmed the United States. And the mere act of the President of the United States acting as a water boy for Israel is disgusting. And Trump should be thrown out of office just on that basis.
Yeah, it's disturbing. I was just going to comment in that. Having been raised in an environment where my dad was in the Navy, he was in Iraqi Freedom. I think that was the Gulf War. His dad was in North Africa, World War II. His dad was in World War One, but he was a Marine, and so on and so forth. And so I think if there was an event where they're like, "Hey, we need to call up veterans or reservists," I actually I just like I wouldn't go. I'm just like peace. And actually knowing what I know now, and you might totally disagree with me and maybe people in the audience, but if my card got pulled and it was Vietnam, I'd be like, "Nah, I'm okay. This is about drugs. This is about something totally different. It's not about stopping communism, in my opinion." And
Yeah, but hang
and
on a
all these
minute.
other wars, I wouldn't. You know,
Hang on, hang on a minute. We didn't know that then. It took years for Americans to wake up to what a disaster Vietnam was. I went into the military when I was 18. I went into flight training when I was 18, got my wings when I was 20. Rah, rah, USA, USA, USA. And now I look at it, somebody does that, and I think, what kind of an idiot does that? And the fact is, a substantial percentage of the population does that because they believe everything they're told. We have alternatives now. We have alternative media with far more information available to us than we have ever had in history, yet we're doing exactly the same thing. We are on the verge of a precipice, starting a war with no purpose whatsoever that we can only lose, and they're going to do it anyway. But I
yes.
salute you. Anybody that would avoid war, good for them.
Well, I wish I had read Smedley Butler's work, but before I went in, I mean, look, I mean, I'm glad I went in. I was in for a very brief period. I didn't do anything remarkable, but it actually really changed my life the way I look at things. And so I think there's a lot of utility in being in, even if it's 4 years or 6 years or what have you. When you're young, get in, get out. But yeah, all the other stuff, and also the suicide stuff. I've mentioned on other episodes, Bob. I've had 5 people I was in the military with take their lives. I had a lieutenant I worked under in Lemoore. He killed himself. I had 3 or 4 people from a special warfare class I was in take their lives. These are, mind you, these are very healthy. These are,
That's
yeah,
absolutely scary. And
yeah.
it's
And
something I can't particularly explain, but I'm sad to see it. Military service is not something that's good for people. It does terrible things to people. It does terrible things to family. I think the country in the world that has the most sane attitude towards war would be Costa Rica.
why do you say that? Because they're used to it or
They
what?
don't have they don't have an army.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Damn. Um, in light of time, and we can obviously continue to dive deep down this topic. I'm just thinking of other topics that we could touch on. I think, unless you have suggestions, I think the state of society is an interesting wrinkle.
Uh,
I'm still,
we're at a tipping point. Okay, it was predicted in the fourth turning. We're in the fourth turning, solidly in the fourth turning. We have governments all over the world trying to go to full blown totalitarianism. And we have a few green shoots of people trying to stand up for freedom. I made the comment before, and frankly, I think it's very funny. Uh, I'm 79. I don't have a problem. You're young. You got a problem, okay? It's not up to me to solve. It's up to you to solve. I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to be around here 20 years from now.
yeah, I think the millennials and then Gen Z. It's interesting to see the difference. I'll be 33 next month, and it is kind of interesting to see differences in someone 10 years younger than me. Just in how they tick, and I've heard some of them are wanting to get away from technology. They don't want the smartphones. They want kind of a flip phone. They don't want to have phone with a high resolution camera. They want to get one of those, totally blanket, like a Kodak, where you it's uses film. It's interesting.
Polaroid.
I think maybe, yeah, yeah. I suspect there might be some pushback with the technology. But the reason why I brought up society is I saw an interesting article, Bob, about Americans selling plasma to make ends meet.
Gary,
OnlyFans is another topic. Yeah, OnlyFans is another topic. Obviously, that's been on the news quite a bit.
OnlyFans. I mean, one thing, and I was shocked by this. I've done a couple of interviews with two brothers who are young, and the sexual mores of today are total, totally baffling to me. We have countries all over the world, Japan, South Korea, Italy, France, the UK, that are not reproducing young people. People don't want to get married. People don't want to have children. I know one couple with 4 children. I grew up in a family with 6 kids. I mean, I would guess that of the kids that I went through grammar school and high school with, that probably 2 out of 3 families had 2 or more children. And there were a lot of families with 5 or 6 children. Those don't exist anymore. And I'll give you some bad news. If you don't reproduce, you're not going to have Social Security. Somebody's got to pay for it. And young people today absolutely don't understand that. So it's one of those good news, bad news things. They have a lot more freedom, but I'm not sure OnlyFans is a good solution.
Well, and as it relates to Social Security, I think it takes, if I'm not mistaken, 13 people to support one person on Social Security. So it might come to a point where you now have maybe only a few people to support that one. And then will that be around in time? As it relates
It
to,
can't. It
uh,
cannot possibly survive mathematically. Well, you just raised a good point. Donald Trump was elected to reduce the size of government. He has done exactly the opposite. The DoD budget's gone from $1 trillion a year. He wants to raise it to $1.5 trillion. We're going $1 trillion into debt every 80 days. That's unsustainable. It has to fail mathematically. 2 things every investor needs to know. If you know this, you understand everything you need to know about economics. One is, if you go to the store and get a balloon and blow into it, eventually it's going to blow up. Doesn't make any difference how big the balloon is. Big balloon, small balloon, same thing's going to happen. If you blow into a balloon, it's going to blow up. And the other is all debt gets paid. It gets paid either by the borrower or it gets paid by the lender. So this concept that we can borrow our way to prosperity is fatally flawed.
that's the Keynesian model there for you. Um, yeah. Okay. So, we bounced around here on some topics. I just wanted to touch on the society. The society part is, um, I have, I'm fortunate in that I have, a Rolodex of contacts, of really all social strata, I should say. But yeah, I'll comment in that even a lot of the people that I know in wealthy enclaves, Orange County, uh, are dispossessed from home ownership to an extent, right?
85,
They are having,
85% of Americans cannot afford the average house. 85%. Wow.
well, in a place, yeah, and in California, I mean, in a lot of parts of the state, you'll get a tiny home for $1 million.
Right. Right. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And then also tying that in, you mentioned about people not reproducing. I'll mention it again. I mentioned it on another show or episode. How many young men are disenfranchised? How many are at home still, well into their 30s. They're not sure what to do. Dating is a fiasco. It is, yeah, people, yeah.
The concept of a male and a female having a family goes back about 500,000 years. Okay. And people want to change it now. We've got a better way of doing it. I read something, and I can't tell you what college it was, but 39% of the males reported were homosexual. What? Okay.
Hmm.
Homosexuality has always existed. I know it exists. It's no big deal. It doesn't bother me. What people do when their bedroom door is closed, it's their business, none of my business. But the fact is, a society literally cannot survive if 40% of the males or 40% of the females are taken out of the reproduction. Reproduction is a natural and healthy part of society. When you reduce that, you create enormous problems. I wasn't being totally facetious when I said that I don't have a problem because I'm 79. And it's absolutely correct. If you're 33, you got a problem. The world has to change or it's going to get fugly for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bob, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
I think that will do it. I absolutely want people to watch what's going on in Iran. That is ultra critical and ultra dangerous. And if it occurs, and I think there's an exceptionally high chance it will, it's going to change our lives in a way that is simply unmeasurable and unpredictable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bob, how can people learn more about you as well as get in touch with you?
Funny thing you mentioned that. I have written probably 10 books. They're available on Amazon. I've got financial books. I've got an autobiography about being in the military. I've got some short fiction. I happen to be a very broad writer and actually a very funny writer. So they can learn a lot by going to Amazon and taking a look at the books. And the other thing is they can go to 321 Gold, which is a free website. It's kind of a Wall Street Journal for resource investors. We haven't even touched on that. The financial system in the world is absolutely breaking down. The debt-based system of the West is collapsing. And if you do not take precautions now to protect your financial future, the crash that Ray Dalio believes is coming is going to come far faster than you can imagine. So we have a free website and we post lots of good information from lots of different writers. And we're trying to help people with their future.
I appreciate your time, your comments, and I will. I'll need to get a copy of your book here. That's long overdue. And be well. I look forward to
What?
visiting you
What?
when I'm in Europe.
What? You just said you hadn't got my book. Ah!
I know that's terrible. I know I need to get it here. I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna write it down right now. I'm got my handy
Well, I got 10
handy
of them.
dandy
I
pen and
mean,
paper.
I got 10 books, and I don't care what your interest is. I've got something that you can read, most of which is very funny. I happen to be a very funny writer.
I believe it. I believe it. I don't think you're pulling us on that one. Well, you take care, Bob. I enjoyed our sit down conversation, and we'll have to do one in person one of these days.
Super deal. I'm here.
All right, you take care. Have a great night.
Good deal.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, I encourage you to like, share, and follow if you found value in it. I also have a new show called Markets with Christian White, which is exclusively focused on the financial markets. If that is something of interest to you, I encourage you to check that out. And I always look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts. And until next time, take care and be well.